Most of us fall in love for the first time while we're still in school or attending college. And for Alex Skeel, a 28-year-old man from Stewartby in Bedfordshire, England, this was no different. But his case is one that's left many people in disbelief when it came to light that he'd been suffering horrific abuse at the hands of Jordan Worth, the woman who claimed to love him. And it would take a near-death incident to finally bring her heinous misdeeds into the public eye for all to see. Alex Skeel didn't have an easy start to his life. He and his twin brother Luke were both born prematurely on the 17th of August, 1995. And weighing just 2 pounds, he had to spend some time in intensive care and underwent several surgical procedures while he was still an infant. He went on to make a full recovery, and later on he and his brother became models for the well-known supermarket franchise Asda. A pretty happy ending to an otherwise tumultuous situation. While growing up, Alex developed a deep love for football, or soccer as we call it in the States, and Alex spent most of his weekends playing the game with his friends. By June of 2012, Alex was 16 years old and attending Bedford College in Bedford, England. It's here that he would meet Jordan Worth, a fellow student who was studying fine arts. On the 3rd of June of that year, one of Alex's friends was performing in a play at the college, and Alex decided to attend to show his support. Jordan was also in attendance, since one of her friends was also in the play, and soon she and Alex started chatting. Now, Alex had never shown much interest in women, but something felt different when he was with Jordan, and before long, he was falling head over heels for her. He found it surprising and exhilarating that Jordan showed interest in him, and at the time, he described her as a confident, caring, and loving person. He introduced her to his friends, and they all got along, though Jordan seemed reserved and introverted compared to the rest of the group. Regardless, they accepted Jordan for who she was, and soon she was just as much a part of the group as anyone else. Alex later introduced Jordan to his family, and this is when he started to notice strange things about her behavior. Jordan would comment on the clothes that he was wearing, and on some occasions would mention that she didn't like the color and that it didn't suit him, and that she thought he should wear something else. She would also make comments about other things like his hairstyle, suggesting that he'd rather wear it in a style that she preferred. And at first, he didn't think much of it, but changed some things that she had mentioned since he wanted to impress her. After all, every relationship is full of compromise. Though, admittedly, these were some pretty strange things to compromise on, and a lot of the time, it wasn't a compromise at all. It almost felt as though Jordan was demanding these things while offering nothing in return. Alex's parents also started noticing that Jordan was playing mind games, and they tried to warn him, but he felt that when he and Jordan were alone, things were different. And although he had also noticed some strange behavior on her part, he was sure that it was nothing to worry about. That brings us to the 17th of August, 2013. Alex and Luke were celebrating their 18th birthdays, and their mother decided to make the day special by hiring a caterer and inviting all of their friends to celebrate with them. But when Jordan got wind that a certain family friend's daughter would be attending, she proclaimed that she wouldn't be going to the party. End of story. But Alex eventually convinced her to change her mind. During the night, though, an altercation broke out between Jordan and the girl, who was just 15 at the time, with Jordan hurling some rather nasty language towards her. Jordan was generally unhappy that Alex was spending all this time with people other than her. She wanted him all for herself, and nothing else would do. Although Alex's friends tried to warn him that Jordan was nothing but trouble, he just couldn't see it. Considering how much he loved her, he allowed her antics to continue, believing it was all for the best. After this argument at the party, the couple started fighting much more frequently, and on one occasion, Jordan lost her temper and snapped Alex's phone's SIM card in half, preventing him from contacting anyone on his phone. He suddenly realized that his family and friends were right, and he decided to end the relationship, much to the relief of everyone around him. From this point forward, things seemed like they'd begun to cool down for Alex. His life gradually got back to normal, and all was well. But Jordan, she had other things in mind. Unfortunately, as is true in many abusive relationships, the separation between Alex and Jordan didn't last long. Just a few days after the breakup, Jordan arrived at the family's house with the shocking news that she was pregnant with Alex's child. He agreed to support Jordan and their child financially, but told her that they couldn't be in a relationship since he couldn't handle the mind games and her controlling behavior. For the next 12 months, they had virtually no contact, and for Alex, things couldn't have been better. Jordan gave birth to a healthy baby boy on the 19th of May, 2014. And without prior warning, Jordan showed up to the family's home with the boy so that everyone could meet him. Though Alex was unhappy with Jordan being invited into the house, his family felt that she'd changed after becoming a mother, since she showed none of the strange behavior that they'd witnessed in the past. For Alex, though, the wounds still felt too fresh, and he wanted no part in this. Instead, he decided to meet his son for the first time without Jordan present, opting instead to do so with his grandfather, who he was very close with, by his side. But before long, as you probably expected, Alex and Jordan started spending time together again while caring for their son, and the following year, they decided to officially and formally get back together. This time, everything seemed different. Jordan truly seemed to have turned over a new leaf, and by Alex's own admittance, their relationship was better than it had ever been. But just a short while later, Alex's family started noticing more alarming behavior, and when Alex confronted Jordan about it, she lost her temper yet again. She told Alex that he had to choose between her and his family. Alex didn't want to be separated from his son, and so he decided to move in with Jordan. His family wouldn't see him again for the next 2 years. The couple had moved into Jordan's parents' house, but here, Jordan's controlling behavior only escalated. She forced Alex to change his phone number, and on several occasions accused him of cheating on her with other women, even though Alex wasn't that kind of person and never showed any interest in anyone else. She also falsely told him that her mother had been informed by his family that his grandfather had passed away. But upon seeing how upset he was, she later admitted that she had lied. Why she did this? Nobody knows. Despite all of this, the couple decided to find their own place in 2016, and they moved to Stewartby. For a while, everything seemed perfect. Alex and Jordan were getting along, their son was healthy, and they loved their new house. Since the relationship seemed to be better than ever before, they decided to have another baby, and soon, Jordan was pregnant once again. While everything was going great during these days, their house of cards would soon come crashing down. And Alex could have never expected the terror and turmoil that his life was about to crash into. Jordan was still in college at this time. She had classes nearly every day. But as time passed by, she began to grow concerned that Alex may have been sneaking around behind her back while she was gone for the day. As it would turn out, she was right. But Alex wasn't sneaking around with other women, he was sneaking around to visit his family. When Jordan found out about this, she was beyond livid. From this point on, she forced Alex to attend all of her classes with her so that she would always be able to keep an eye on him. Alex hesitantly agreed because he couldn't stand the thought of shaking the foundations of his already fragile family. It wasn't long after this that Jordan had set up a fake Facebook profile in Alex's name, and in the months that followed, she contacted his friends via private messages, stating that he wanted nothing to do with them and that he'd never really considered them as his friends in the first place. Luckily, they quickly caught on and replied that they knew Jordan was the one messaging them, resulting in them being blocked from the fake profile. She also messaged his family pretending to be Alex, telling them that he didn't want any contact with them and that they should just leave him alone. Again, it seems the family knew that these messages weren't from Alex, but from Jordan. By this time, Alex's family had had enough, and they made up their minds to intervene. They knew that the couple had relocated to Stewartby, but when they finally tracked Alex down at his new address, their knocks were ignored, despite the couple clearly being home. They were under the impression that Alex didn't want to see them, and so they had no choice but to leave. In the meantime, Jordan's behavior had gotten worse than ever before, and on one occasion, she forced Alex to swallow an entire packet of sleeping tablets, which left him with memory loss for the rest of the evening. When he finally woke up, he had no clue what had taken place, and to this day, that evening is still a bit of a blur. A few days later, the two were driving in their car when, without provocation, Jordan picked up her hairbrush and started assaulting Alex with it, resulting in one of his teeth breaking off. She would later admit to the assault, but maintained that she had never been abusive towards him before, nor had she ever kept him from contacting his family. The investigation into this incident more or less ended right there. But things would only get far, far worse from here. During the nights when Alex had fallen asleep before Jordan, he would repeatedly be awoken by blows to his head, which would leave him with scars afterward. During one of these attacks, Alex was unsure what had even happened, and to his shock, he realized that Jordan had assaulted him with a hammer. When questioned by the police later on, Jordan would admit that she had in fact used a hammer to assault him, but inexplicably stated that she never meant to hurt him. But then, investigators found out that she had taken things a step further on a couple occasions, pulling out a knife. Her response to this accusation was even more baffling. She stated that yes, she had used a knife to assault him, but she only ever cut him and never jabbed him with it, as if that would make things better. It would seem that in her mind, the two actions were vastly different. But in reality, regardless of how things specifically played out, Alex's life was in constant danger. By this time, Alex had started to lose weight in a dramatic way, since Jordan would sometimes not allow him to eat. This would usually be when she wasn't hungry, and so she didn't see the point in preparing dinner, and it would seem that she prevented Alex from preparing dinner either. She also started prohibiting him from sleeping in their bed, instead forcing Alex to sleep on the floor. She would later make the excuse that there wasn't space for Alex, since she was sharing their bed with their baby, but this was an obvious lie. Alex knew that he was in trouble by this point. There was no doubt in his mind that he was going downhill physically, but his judgment had become so clouded that he didn't know what to do. He saw no other option than to contact his family for help, and in February of 2017, he contacted his father out of desperation. But when his father arrived at the couple's house, all of the lights were suddenly switched off, and Alex asked him to leave, but he refused to do so. Instead, his father phoned the police since he suspected that Jordan was keeping him from coming outside. He didn't know how right he was. It would seem that for weeks or months leading up to this, Jordan had prevented Alex from leaving the house at any point without her accompaniment or approval. He was to remain in her line of sight at all hours of the day, no exception. When officers arrived later on, they spoke with the couple and then told Alex's father that the couple had merely had an argument and that the issue had been resolved. They did, however, mention that Alex was seen walking with a limp, but stated that there wasn't much that they could do other than to ensure that the fight was well and truly over. Disappointed by the outcome, Alex's father had no choice but to leave empty-handed. It would seem at this point, Alex was desperate to get out of the relationship, but Jordan's controlling behavior had gotten so out of control that he had no idea how to deal with it or how to escape the nightmare that he was living. He was now a prisoner within his own home. He couldn't leave. He couldn't sleep. It almost felt as though he couldn't breathe without Jordan's permission. But quite unbelievably, the worst was yet to come. Alex would later recall that he and Jordan went to see a band perform in Leeds one night, and he thoroughly enjoyed himself. Not only because it was his favorite band, but because he and Jordan were having a good time, and he felt as though he didn't need to worry about being abused for once, even if only for one night. But his relief was short-lived. The following morning, he woke up in their hotel room to the horrific realization that Jordan was pouring boiling water down his back for reasons unknown. He would later state that he'd started screaming in pain and couldn't understand why she had done this. When Jordan was confronted about this by investigators later on, she merely stated that it was untrue, since she had never poured boiling water on Alex while they were in Leeds, with her exact words being, quote, "Never in Leeds, never." On another occasion, Jordan purchased a cheap lie detecting device, which she told Alex to strap to his hand. She quizzed him on things about all kinds of stuff, all the while standing ready with the kettle of boiling water, which she intended to use if he was found by the machine to have been untruthful. To make matters worse, Jordan would reveal a short while later that she'd fallen pregnant yet again. But while most of us would recoil in horror at the thought of this, Alex believed that having another baby together might bring about a change in Jordan's behavior. But as is to be expected, this simply wasn't the case. Their second child, a girl, was born in May of 2017. And for the first few days, Alex did see a change in her behavior. But this wouldn't last long. The couple had started arguing yet again, and one night their neighbor had had enough and decided to call the police. The caller would tell the 999 dispatcher that he was certain someone was being assaulted since he heard a man asking someone to stop hurting him and to get off of him. When officers arrived at the scene, they had to knock and call out several times before the door was opened by Jordan. The first officer to see her stated that she didn't seem in any way distressed, and she calmly stated that there had been an incident in which Alex had hurt himself. She added that he had a history of self-harm, which was of course untrue. But when the officer asked Alex whether this was the case, he stated that it was, likely out of fear that he would be assaulted if he contradicted her. It would later come to light that Jordan had been assaulting Alex with a bread knife. In an effort to defend himself, he had to put his hand in front of his face to avoid being cut, and in the process sustained a serious injury to his hand. After the police left, Alex went to a local hospital where he received stitches, and since the police officers couldn't see any evidence that a crime had been committed, they took the couple's word that the injury was self-inflicted, and hence could do nothing further. The injury to Alex's hand was so severe that he needed surgery, but before this could happen, Jordan arrived and decided that he needed to go home instead. Hospital staff were quick to realize what was going on, and they tried to convince him to stay, if only to undergo the necessary procedure. Alex was then seen by a consultant who asked him if he was sure that he wanted to leave, since he felt that it would be unsafe. But Alex assured him that everything would be all right, so he left the hospital and went home with Jordan. He would later admit that in that moment, he knew he had a chance to reveal everything that had been done to him, but he was frightened at what the repercussions would be the next time that he was alone with Jordan. A few days later, the same officer who'd been called to the house before returned to the property for yet another domestic incident report. And this time, he sat Alex down to ask him whether he was being abused while he ordered Jordan to stay downstairs. But Alex stated that he and Jordan had merely been arguing since they were under a lot of stress. In body cam footage of the incident, it becomes clear that the officer doesn't believe him and decides to take Alex out of the house. He escorted Alex to his patrol car and asked him to finally tell the truth since they were in a safe environment where they couldn't be overheard. Alex stuck to his story for a short while, but eventually relented and admitted that he had been suffering abuse at Jordan's hand for years. But he pleaded with investigators to only rely on neighbors' reports, since he didn't want Jordan to find out that he'd been the one to accuse her of a crime. Officers returned to the house and informed Jordan that she was being placed under arrest for assault, and that she would be taken to the police station for questioning, where she would be allowed to tell her side of the story. The officer would later report that Jordan mistakenly thought that she would only be out of the house for an hour or so, and that she'd be allowed to leave as soon as she had, quote, cleared everything up. Alex was then taken back to the hospital, where the true horrific nature of his injuries was revealed. Due to the head trauma that he had sustained, fluid had built up on his brain, and doctors informed him that if he hadn't received treatment when he did, he likely would have lost his life in about 10 days. When interviewed later by investigators, Alex stated that he never lashed out at Jordan in self-defense, since he didn't want to hurt her. He added that he never reported the abuse since he believed it would stop one day, and that the relationship would turn out to be okay. After being questioned by police and admitting to the abuse that she'd inflicted on Alex, Jordan was charged with 17 counts of grievous bodily harm and controlling or coercive behavior. She pleaded guilty to 3 of the charges, and in April of 2018, she was found guilty and handed 2 7-year sentences to be served at the same time. She also received 6 months for the controlling or coercive behavior, becoming the first woman in UK history to be convicted of that charge. After being released from the hospital, Alex moved back in with his family, who were all too happy to see him home and safe. Jordan would eventually be released in 2023 after serving just 5 years of her sentence, when it was found that she no longer posed a risk to her surrounding community. She'll never be allowed to contact Alex again, and Alex has since gone on to become a football or soccer coach, and is now an ambassador for a charity against domestic violence called the Mankind Initiative, who also sponsors his football team. Alex has vowed to do everything within his power to spread the word of Jordan's abuse, but in a positive way, hoping to inspire other victims to take any opportunity they can to get out of an awful situation, such as the one that he had to live through. He's also started hosting talks in which he informs others of the signs of domestic abuse, and he's since stated that he's learning how to cope with the trauma and the memories of the abuse against him. He's now concentrating on the life ahead of him and creating a promising future for his children. There's been no word on what happened with Jordan after her release, but considering she's now prohibited from ever speaking to Alex again, I think I can speak for everyone when I say, who even cares what happened to her? Good riddance. It's not often that cases like this have a happy ending, so let this be a lesson to all of us. You're worth a lot more than you probably give yourself credit for. We're all above being abused, talked down to, or physically assaulted. I've said it in past videos, it can never be too early to get out of a bad situation, but it can always be too late. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories, and a huge thanks to Juan from Top 5 Unknowns for helping me out with this case since, well, as you can see, I can't really use a keyboard or mouse right now. If you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case that I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and keeps you up to date with all of my future videos. You can also click that join button below to help support the channel and see new videos long before everyone else does. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.